How you guys doing? My name is Sean Flory. This is
Daniel Rhodes. Thought you were going to say my name there for a second.
I wanted to, but we are the Fantasy Forecasters, bringing you all the latest and greatest of the fantasy news of fantasy football. Just a little bit about myself. I am a terrible fantasy football player. I've gotten last in the last 5 years. And my buddy Danny here.
It's technically 4 years for it. We've had a league that actually we run for the last couple years. And by the way, he's gotten last. I won the first 2 years. Got second the third year. So still made the championship, even though I had one of the worst teams in the league. I was able to pull it together. And then last year, we're not even going to talk about. But I have a little bit more success, but that's not to say I'm a fantasy all-star. But we're going to tell you how to play fantasy football today anyway for the year 2018.
And we're just as good as the weathermen, so it's perfect.
I was going to say, we are the fantasy forecasters. We forecast just as good as the weatherman, and we all know how good that is. So we're going to go ahead and jump into our first video here. So today, we're going to be talking about quarterback. So every week, we're going to be talking about a different position leading up to the actual season, and then last week, we'll probably be talking about the rest of the positions left. Obviously, the big ones we're talking about are going to be QBs, running backs, wide receivers, and then everything else. So today's going to be...
Kickers are people too. Gotta talk about the kickers.
Half the leagues don't even have kickers anymore, though.
Gotta talk about the kickers.
Aren't you the one who wanted to get kickers out of our league just last year? Okay, fair enough. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be going over a couple things for quarterback-wise. So we both made a list. I've made mine longer. I have 35. He has 10. That's how good I am. I go above and beyond for you. And we're going to go through just our top 10, though. After all that I just said, we're going to just go through top 10. And I'm going to kick
35 is completely useless.
Well, it's going to come in handy for me later on when I actually do the draft.
Useless.
Just wait. My number 35 is Jacoby Brissett, and he could come from behind and do it. But anyway, you don't like Jacoby Brissett?
No. Right.
I would put Jacoby Brissett higher than that, honestly, because who knows how... Anyway, we'll get to that later, because I know where we're going to go with that anyway. So, our top 10 list, we're not going to go too long on this, because we assume at this point they're going to be very similar. I have not looked at his, he has not looked at mine, and believe me, we're going to let the other person have it if someone's in there that's Blake Bortles. So, without further ado, my top 10. So, 1, Russell Wilson. Like I said, last year he was the top quarterback. He basically carried the Seahawks on his back last year, and I think he's going to continue to do that. Iffy on my number 2, I have Tom Brady there. He's old. That's basically the best way to put it. He's 41.
But you still have the number 2.
But who else is there? I mean, obviously I'm going to name 8 more people. But he still has a good receiving core, if they stay healthy, of course. And I guess they did just get rid of one of the receivers already this year. And I guess the other 3 are already injured. But still, Tom Brady at number 2. You got Tom Terrific. Doesn't matter how old he is, he's going to do good. Matt Stafford I have pretty high up there at number 3. He has to have, if he can stay healthy. I have him that high, only hoping that he can stay healthy throughout the season. Last year, he carried me half the year. And then got injured, and he kept playing, and kind of looked awful. So if he can stay healthy, I have him up there. Aaron Rodgers is the exact same way. I have him number 4. It's all to do if he can stay healthy. If not, the next Packers quarterback's probably on number 47 on my list. So if it's not Rodgers, don't go Packers. Drew Brees, 5. Once again, another old one, but he's got a team around him that he should be able to put up some numbers this year with that team around him. Cam Newton, number 6, that may be a little high. I'm iffy on that, number 2, but he can run the ball no matter what happens, no matter what defense they're playing. He's going to run it. He's going to get you rushing touchdowns.
Goal line, he's going to carry the ball. Right.
No problem. And like I said, as you can see, I'm a Vikings fan, so I'm not impartial. I'm going to be as impartial as possible. I do have Kirk Cousins as high at number 7. Honestly, if you look at all the quarterbacks in the league, I didn't think it was going to be this hard to get quarterbacks there. I thought there was more start quarterbacks until you start really looking and you're like, wow, they're all retired, aren't they? So I put Kirk Cousins at number 7, but like I said, no impartialness here. But Trevor Simeon's at number 8 for me here. Just because you have to have the... I'm kidding. Trevor Simeon. I was going to go with the backup. You have to have Kirk Cousins' backup, man. What? No. And you gotta do handcuffs early, that's I handcuffs up. Anyway, so Matt Ryan, number 8, he didn't have a good year, but can you really keep Julio Jones down for so many years? And all he has to do is throw the ball up in Julio Jones' direction. He's got it. I do have Deshaun Watson in my top 10. I have Deshaun Watson at number 9. Once again, that's how he comes back from injury. It's a torn ACL, wasn't it? Was it torn ACL? So with him being a running quarterback, that's tough to come back from. But I still think he has all the upside to be in the top 10 there. And number 10, once again, and a lot of my top 10 is based off injury here. Carson Wentz, I have at number 10 right now. I hear he's getting healthy, and I hear he's going to be back. Maybe not week 1, but we'll see in preseason as we go if he's healthy. I do have Nick Foles a little farther down on my list just in case he's not. But if Carson Wentz plays, Carson Wentz healthy, he's a top 10 guy. And that's my list. I will shoot it over to Sean here for his list now.
Well, I'm going to take it away here. Number 1, I am on the Deshaun Watson train.
Number 1.
All day long.
Number
this
1.
guy, all he does is win. His numbers at Clemson's prove it. He's a Heisman winner. He's fantastic. Look at his numbers last year when he was healthy and he played. He was the number 1 fantasy ranked quarterback when he played.
So you're sure that Will Fuller is going to be healthy all year long to be a number 2?
You've got DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, Lamar Miller. You've got.
I would have announced Lamar Miller as a top guy there. And the tight end, you can't even name him. He's got tight ends, he's got running backs, he's got wide receivers.
He's got the star power. He is gonna. If he stays healthy, he will be the number 1 fantasy quarterback this year.
I'm not arguing that he can't be number 1, but I would say at this point in the year, I don't know if I'd say he's the number 1 quarterback.
When he tore his ACL in college, the next year he had an amazing year. If anyone can do it, has the track record and success that he has, he can.
Now to cut you off completely on here, if you're in your draft, do you draft him in your first round?
Depending on what position you are, absolutely. If you're the tail end, of your draft, like the 12th pick, and all the best running backs are out there, I say you're good to Deshaun Watson.
Note to self, run Deshaun Watson up on Sean and draft this
I have no fear of taking Deshaun Watson number 1.
Good trade bait. No, I got it.
Number 2, I have Aaron Rodgers. Again, this is a big question if he's healthy. You know he has the receivers. You know they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. I will say there is a little bit of hesitation here because of the running back situation now that they have. So be wary, but let's be honest, he's Aaron Rodgers. You know he's going to be in the top 5 every year. He always is. Number 3, Russell Wilson, of course. Like Danny said, he carried the Seahawks. There's no doubt that he's going to get the fantasy points. They did bring in Penny, the running back. I think that's definitely going to take a lot of pressure off of Russell Wilson, but he's still going to throw the ball. He's still going to command the offense. He's still going to be your top guy. Number 4, I have the ageless wonder, Tom Brady. 4th overall.
Wait, you went all off of me for having him at number 2,
but
and you still have him in the top 5.
You have him behind Aaron Rodgers, or before
Aaron Rodgers. Well, Aaron Rodgers' injuries.
But still, you know Aaron Rodgers is going to bounce back. He's going to do his thing. Brady is 31, so there is some question marks. Quarterbacks usually drop off after that age.
Well, here's my argument for it, though. Aaron Rodgers' numbers for the last 2 years, even before the injury, didn't look great for fantasy-wise. A lot of people have gotten destroyed by Rodgers in drafts just because his numbers have.
Well, you can talk to Rusty about Tom Brady.
Talk to Rusty about Tom Brady.
About Tom Brady. Anyway, moving on. Number 5, I actually took another flyer on this one. As long as he stays healthy, Carson Wentz is another top player.
Yeah.
That offense is built to score. There's no doubt about it. If he stays healthy and can get it back on week 1, Carson Wentz is going to be a top 5 play all year long.
Yeah.
Number 6, I'm with Danny on this one. Cam Newton, fantasy-wise, he may not be the greatest quarterback in terms of football play, but fantasy-wise, he's always a top play. Number 7, I have Drew Brees. I'm a little bit buyer beware on Drew Brees, mainly because they're going to be running the football a lot. They've kind of shifted their focus to a ground and pound kind of system. If you look at Brees' numbers last year, they were good, but from a fantasy standpoint, he did have a couple of stinkers, and I think that's something we all need to be worried about. Number 8, I have Matt Stafford. Again, the Lions, we know, have no running game. They brought in LeGarrette Blount. Blunt's great, but the problem is he's injured. At the same time, he's not the running back he was several years ago. So to ask him to carry the ball 100 times, 200 times for 1,000 yards, I don't think that's reasonable, and I think the Lions are going to be throwing the football a lot.
Yeah.
They have the weapons to do so, so lock Stafford in as the top 10 play. Number 9, I'm with Denny on this one. The Vikings, Kirk Cousins, he put up great numbers in Washington with very little. Now he's going into a better system, better receivers, better tight ends, all around better team offensively. You have to love Kirk Cousins as long as he stays healthy. The upside's definitely there. Number 10, I went with a little mix here. I have 2 people that you can kind of interchange. I'm on the Jimmy G bandwagon. I think what he did last year wasn't a fluke. I think he's going to continue that success. The 49ers put pieces in place to be a high-octane offense that can score with the best of them. And you look at that division, the Seahawks defense is in disarray, the Cardinals are in rebuild, the Rams defense is legit, but we've all seen what running quarterbacks can do to them. a la Russell Wilson. So I think that Jimmy G is definitely a top player. The other player I kind of have splashed in there is Andrew Luck. If he can stay healthy,
Big if.
I think he can definitely be a top fantasy quarterback. Now, the downside to Andrew Luck is you have to worry about the teams he plays. You have the Jaguars secondary, they're no joke. You have the Titans, who the last 2 months of the league had the #1 pass defense in the NFL. Not a lot of people talk about it. The Texans defense should be improved. So Andrew Luck, buyer beware, but if he stays healthy, I think he'd definitely be a top 10 fan.
And another thing for that is basically the Texans defense was really good last year early on, and then when Watson went down, their offense never had the ball after that. So that's when the defense went down. So they do have a good defense. So that's tough for Andrew Luck.
Next, we're going to move on to our boomer bust type of players. These are players that are buyer beware. I'm going to go ahead and start here. My first bust player that I want to warn you guys about is Jameis Winston. Guys, he eats W's. I don't even know what that means, but he does it. You look at their offense and how they're built, his numbers should be off the charts with, when he had Deshaun Jackson, when he had Vincent Jackson. The numbers just aren't there. They're not translating. I think the Bucs are getting a little tired of his antics, especially with the whole Uber situation. So I would just buyer beware on Jameis Winston. There is upside, but at the same time, it just hasn't been correlated very well.
And my issue is both of those Jacksons have bitten me in the butt in years on fantasy football. So I do not trust a person with the last name Jackson anymore in my fantasy football.
Don't drink the Jackson juice.
Don't drink it was B Jackson, now it's a D Jax juice. We'll talk about that in a couple weeks. Okay, so my biggest bust here would be Sam Bradford. If he can stay healthy, he could do decent there, but that's a big if. When was the last time I guess the Eagles season that he was there was the last time he stayed healthy. Right. It's been a long time. I would not draft him. I feel like he's not going to even make it to week 4. In all honesty, his body is completely fragile. I don't know if there's really any reason to draft any Cardinals quarterback at all this year, in all honesty. But Sam Bradford is one that I would avoid at all costs, just because, not because he's a bad quarterback, but because of the injuries that he's had.
Right. We can do that.
Yeah, go ahead, another bust. Let's do another bust.
Another bust that I'm very, very leery of is the Patrick Mahomes train. I am not a fan of Patrick Mahomes.
That's why I want to go to another one.
If you look at his number, or if you look at his training camp, out of training camp, he's throwing interceptions, he's calling the wrong plays, he's just not there. I think give him a year or two under the system, potentially, there's a lot of potential there is, absolutely. But I think this year is a year to avoid him. If you're in a dynasty or a keeper league, he may be someone you want to target cheap or late. But I think as far as this year is concerned, Patrick Mahomes is on the top of my avoid list.
Yeah, and my argument on that too would be, right there with you, I wouldn't take him, would be that I think they gave up Alex Smith a year too early. I think they should have kept Alex Smith, kept Mahomes grown a little bit. He showed clearly at the end of the year last year that he's not quite ready. Yes, he had an offseason, but from what I hear, he's looking pretty good in training camp, but training camp's completely different than games.
Is that before he threw like 4 or 5 interceptions?
That's before the 4 or 5 interceptions. He looked good the first day, and then since then he's been junk.
Especially considering the Chiefs are potentially in a situation where their roster is built to win now. Tyreek Hill. I mean, you have all these different weapons that they have. So for them to just get rid of Alex Smith so freely, to put Mahomes in that situation, I understand it, but I agree with Danny, it's a year too soon.
Yeah, and it's not to say, and not that Alex Smith is my next, but it's not to say I think Alex Smith is going to have a great year this year, but I still think he would have been better in Kansas City this year than, say, Mahomes. So my other one, and I'm about to get punched here, would be Blake Bortles. Don't let it fool you that he had a team in the championship game last year. His numbers have not looked great at all.
He played with a fractured hand.
Here we go.
Give the man a break.
At any point in the season.
You are a poor hater. People like
at any point in the season, he had one great game against the Steelers, and that was pretty much it for him. The defense
He was
carried
the
that
number
team.
1 fantasy quarterback in the month of December. Keep that in mind. That was with a fractured throwing hand. What can he do when he's healthy?
Blake Bortles is not worth it. Maybe take him as your 5th string, 6th string, possibly even 8th string quarterback if you have that many. But I would not touch Blake Bortles with an 8.5-foot pole. I'm sorry, I would not touch Bortles. With that being said, so then we go into our next one. Hey, I'm shocked he held back from punching me on that. Now Kirk Cousins is about to get ripped apart here any second now. So basically, if you can't tell by the way, he's a Jaguars fan. I don't know if you were able to catch that from this last segment, but he's a Jaguars fan. We live in Pennsylvania. So we're going to jump into the high risk, high reward. So these are the quarterbacks that not necessarily anyone's talking about per se, but these are the quarterbacks that we think that maybe not put a lot of money down, because quarterbacks usually, you could get a good one in the 15th round or something
Absolutely.
like that. But these are the ones that we would say, hey, you might be able to take them, and you might not need a top 10 quarterback. These are the quarterbacks that you might be good with, and we think you're going to be good with this year.
These are the plug and plays, your matchup, like your bye weeks, your matchup based plays. Let's be honest, you're not going to. Some quarterbacks you're just not going to play every week if they have a bad matchup. These are the guys you could possibly plug in and play, and at the same time return you high.
By matchup. So mine would be Jared Goff. Last year he was very hit on some games, but then he had those games like, once again, knowing the Vikings won, the Vikings game where he didn't even show up. I mean, it was hard to watch for Rams fans. So Jared Goff is one of those, though, that put up numbers against bad defenses. I think almost every bad defense he was against last year, he was thrown out there. They were the top offense for, the first half of the season, if not a little longer than that. So I think Jared Goff could be one person to look at for something later in the draft. If you aren't able to nab one of the obvious top 5 quarterbacks, he might be one there for you. Especially with the Seahawks falling apart, that's 2 right there that should be.
Right.
It's an easier division than it was, say, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even last year. It's an easier division than it is. I personally think the Rams are going to run that division. I don't think there's any challenge in there. So I would say Jared Goff would be my biggest name in that section.
All right, now, all fandom aside, I'm not going to go with Blake Bortles here, even though I want to, and I can make some very valid arguments. I'm going to go a different direction. I am all over Andy Dalton as a high upside player, and here's why. You look at his numbers from a few years ago. He was a great fantasy quarterback a few years ago. But what has changed? Not a whole lot. He still has Tyler Eifert. He still has A.J. Green. John Ross is healthy. He's been in the system for another year. I think that's going to translate really well this year. I think if you look at their running backs and the rookie running back they got, Joe Mixon, last year, Andy Dalton has a lot of potential. And let's be honest, that division, there's no defense that's scary anyway. The Steelers' defense is a mess. The Ravens are hit or
Blake Bortles
miss.
put up points on that.
Exactly. You look at the Browns' defense, they're not scaring anybody. I think Dalton has a lot of potential. He definitely has the weapons. He just has to put it all together.
Here's my problem with Dalton. So once again, A.J. Green, one of the best receivers in the league, by far.
Just don't start Dalton in primetime.
Yeah, never ever start Dalton in prime time. My problem is, beyond that, yes, we can argue all day for John Ross, but he was a bust last year. And do we know he's going to step up this year? No. Eifert is injured a lot. Is he going to make it the whole season?
But this is why he's a boomer bust player.
I get that. But I mean, even if both of those guys are healthy, Dalton last year had a little bit of a better run. He had Jeremy Hill, who was a bust. He didn't do anything. He had Gio Bernard, who got injured,
Right.
But Joe Mixon stepped it up last year and did have a couple games late. And Dalton still wasn't putting up double digits in fantasy points. And by the way, this is PPR, none of it matters for this point. Dalton didn't put up the points. I think Dalton could be good in another system. I think maybe if they got rid of Marvin Lewis and got a different system in there, I would go right with you and say Dalton.
Right.
For me, I wouldn't touch Dalton. I would not have him on the roster. I can see where you're coming from for Dalton. I really can. But for me, I wouldn't touch Dalton. I don't think
I'm speaking from a pure matchup-based point.
True.
I think he definitely has some upside in certain situations. Like I said, you can't hold that offense down too long. Maybe it's Dalton, maybe it isn't Dalton. But with all those weapons, sooner or later something's got to click.
Well,
and this could be the year.
Well, they got rid of A.J. McCarron, so who else they got there?
Exactly. There's no, which could be a bad thing for Dalton because now he has no one to really push him. But I think Dalton's really going to respond this year. I think from like a speculative standpoint, a fix, Dalton might be able to help you out in a pinch as long as he's not playing Sunday or Monday night.
Don't draft Dalton. No. So I'm going to throw one more out there. It's just because I haven't heard this name. And yes, he clearly got overshadowed by the person who replaced him last year. But he will be the starter again this year, and he was pretty good before then. So clearly Ryan Tannehill, I think, would be not a bad one to look at. His numbers
Who's
in
he
the
throwing
past,
to?
no one.
Exactly.
He does got a couple good receivers. I didn't look into deep.
Yeah, what
I don't
are their
remember the receiver's name.
What are their
Well,
names?
no, they have that top tough guy. They have that one tough guy, and I cannot think of names.
Devontae Parker, that guy?
Devontae Parker, yeah, that guy.
He's been so great.
He's been injured too.
Yeah,
but same general thing. But same general argument that you made for Dalton, I'm going to make for Tannehill. Tannehill had some really good seasons before he went down. Yes, Jay Cutler came in and made the Dolphins look like a joke last year.
But they beat Tom Brady.
But they beat Tom Brady. But he made them look like a joke, although he hasn't retired yet, so Cutler can still come out. But I would still look into it. Now, for this one, would I take Tannehill anywhere before, depending how many rounds you have before the 15th round? Probably not. I would take him in maybe the last round. He's going to be available. No matter what way you look at it, he's going to be available at the end of the draft. So if you're in a league where you have a huge pinch, you're stuck down to Ryan Tannehill or, say, Nathan Peterman or something like that as your choices, take Ryan Tannehill. He can start for you some weeks. Like Sean said, they did lose Jarvis Landry. That's going to hurt him a lot. But I still think he's a very talented person, a very talented quarterback. Even though we all laughed when the Dolphins drafted him a couple years ago, I still think that he has something left.
To that point, I'm not going to argue that I like Tannehill. I think he could be a deep sleeper. I'm just not going to roster him unless I absolutely have to.
Hey, you know how my season goes. I always just randomly draft quarterbacks when I get desperate.
I get it, but to me,
remember though,
there's no legit receiving threats. They did get the tight end, Gesicki from Penn State. I think that can help, but I just don't think it's going to be enough, especially for what Miami's trying to do. I think they're going to focus more on the ground and pound with their running backs. So to me, I'm going to steer clear as much as I can away from Tannehill until he proves he's healthy, and B, he proves that there's actually some person on offense that's going to step up and be that number.
Look at that running back that exploded at the end of the season.
Yeah, what's his name? The last thing we're going to do here real quick is we're just going to go through a couple of different questions just to kind of liven it up. The first question we're going to talk about is rookie quarterbacks. Which rookie quarterback would you feel safe rostering on your team as not only maybe a dynasty keeper or someone that you could possibly see starting this year?
See, and there's a couple of them there that I think are going to end up starting before the season's out, but there's really only one that has the team. And I want to say, not say it because I don't like Tyrod Taylor, because I do like Tyrod Taylor a lot, and I think if he can stay healthy with his running scheme, because he gets hit hard a lot with his run scheme, he could be a good starter there, especially gaining Jarvis Landry, although they did just lose Corey Coleman. Anyway, but I would say Baker Mayfield would probably be my pick for it, just because, for one, the Browns quarterback switch, people switch their underwear just as quick as that anymore. Yeah, so Baker Mayfield, they're going to be up to about 37 since 1999 or something like that. So it is insane where they're at. So out of all of them, you can almost be guaranteed that at some point this year, Baker Mayfield will be starter. And the guy showed a lot of skill in college. Will that go to the NFL? Well, probably not, because he's a Browns quarterback. But we'll see what happened. We saw what happened to Johnny Manziel, so we'll see what happens.
I agree. I am definitely a firm believer in Baker Mayfield. I love what he did in college. I love his spirit, his attitude. He's definitely a winner. I think if you look at the Browns' offense, they have pieces in place. They have Jarvis Landry. They have David Njoku. They have Josh Gordon. When all those guys come together, and if they can mesh well, I think it definitely makes for a great opportunity for Johnny Football. Baker Mayfield, I think he's going to be a fantastic quarterback, especially for the Browns. Hopefully it works out, but that's all the rookies out there, Baker Mayfield's my pick as well.
Although once again, on top of that, what's your thoughts on Sam Darnold?
Here we go again with another USC quarterback taken in the top 5. I like Darnold's upside, but the Jets are a mess. Robbie Anderson was their clear number 1 guy last year. He's dealing with a whole slew of...
Is he going to make it out of jail?
Exactly. No one knows. I think their running game is just a suspect right now. I like Darnold in the long run, but until the Jets get pieces in place, I'm not going to go after him.
Yeah, and like I said, that's my biggest argument for him. It kind of similar to Tannehill, take away the injury part, is where I would like him deep, because he's going to start this year. I don't see Josh McCown making it the whole year. I mean, he had his one decent year in New York. It wasn't a good year like the rest of the teams he's been on besides the Browns, but he had his one decent year in New York. He's not going to do much this year.
I think so. Teddy Bridgewater.
He's already on the trade block, though. That's my worry about Bridgewater there. And Bridgewater could be someone that could take over that team. And he looked terrible in his one Vikings game they played. It wasn't much of a game.
But
it was late in the fourth quarter.
But
he hadn't played in 2 years. I love Teddy Bridgewater. I want to put that out there. But he's already been talks of him being on the trade block. So I still am. If that were to go through, that Darnold will almost definitely start at some point this season. Now, do you draft him? No. No, but definitely keep an eye on him throughout the year. Definitely keep an eye on the news stories throughout the year to see if he's worth signing. I think he might be someone, like you said, to kind of keep for the next year or something like that, more so than play this year. But if you get desperate and you have a 40-team league, then he might be your starter all year. Who knows?
Right.
Who has a 40-team league these days? I'm going to try that now. Let's do that. So the next question is a real humdinger here. So, Sean, out of all the QBs on the team, which Buffalo Bills quarterback do you take? If you're desperate, if you're going through the draft and for some reason some person drafted let's make an argument, drafted 20 QBs on their team and no other position, and every other team but you has a QB, and only thing left out there is Bills QBs, who do you take?
You quit.
You quit.
You run
Good
away.
answer.
You
Good
retire
answer.
from fantasy football, and you don't look back.
I don't think you even have to answer anymore. That's the answer.
The Bills are a mess. Their quarterback situation is probably the worst in the league. Nathan Peterman, all he does is throw interceptions.
He was a rookie though. That was rookie year. Rookie quarterbacks don't always come out and look good. Nathan Peterman has reportedly been the best quarterback in training camp there though,
There you go.
and will probably be starter unless they really want to hotshot McCarron up there.
The only thing that I would recommend doing, the only Bills quarterback I will ever
I think you
touch
can say about Browns too and all this.
is Rosen. I will take him only as a keeper to maybe think that the Bills will put something in place. I'm not buying it. I think the Bills are a mess. They made the playoffs last year. That's probably the highlight of their next 10 years.
10, 20 years.
But to me, I'm staying away from the Bills quarterback situation. And if I have to pick one, I'm just going to retire.
And to be fair with that, on top of all that, I'm pretty certain that once week 17 rolls around, you could probably still get all three of them if you want. So you got plenty of time to choose.
They're all going to
By the way, just as FYI, I would say Peterman, just because he's going to be the starter at the beginning of the year, more than likely.
Just pick up the defense that started the Bills stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say pick up the defense, and if you have to start a Bills quarterback, I would pick up the backup quarterback of, say, a Sam Bradford or someone who's bound to get injured instead.
If you have a higher upside playing a backup quarterback than a Bills quarterback.
By far.
The next question is Jimmy G real? Everyone talked about him last year. He came on strong for the 49ers. He led them to how many straight wins? 6?
He's undefeated. He has not lost a game as starter.
The guy looks great. Prior to Jimmy G, the 49ers offense was a mess. They were barely scoring any points. They averaged almost 20 points a game since Jimmy G came in.
Yep.
Do you think Jimmy G is the real deal?
For non-fantasy wise, yes. I think he is a game manager. I think he can lead that team no matter who's there. They didn't really gain much different from last year. I know Jerick McKinnon, I think, was their biggest offseason signing on that offense. But I still think Jimmy G's game manager. Now, when you look at fantasy-wise, yes, he did all of that in the last couple weeks, but if you look at his fantasy numbers, they weren't still the greatest in that run. He won every game, which is awesome, but fantasy-wise, it still didn't show up. Is that to say he's not this year? No. I think Jimmy G is going to have a pretty good year fantasy, maybe top 15, maybe even top 10. I'm worried about the wide receivers down there in San Francisco, but he's still, with him being a game manager, he could finish top 10 up there. My worries about him, once again, is with no weapons down there that are proven yet or anything like that. Is he going to do? They lost Carlos Hyde this year, which was considered one of their biggest weapons these last couple of years. So while game-wise, I think the 49ers are going to finish second in that division. I think they could have a chance at finishing 500 or above. I don't see Jimmy G being a starting quality, at least right away, quarterback in fantasy. Would I draft him? Depends what round you're in. If you're in the top 10 rounds or something like that, your early rounds where you're picking, still filling up your starting spot stuff, probably not, although he's probably going to be off the board after that. But if you're going after that in the draft and he's still there, say round 13, 14 or something like that, then yeah, I would take it and take him as my backup as long as I already have, say, a Russell Wilson on my team. As long as I drafted a Cam Newton, a Kirk Cousins, something like that before that, yes, I would take Jimmy G, not just for a backup on tough weeks like that, but also trade bait.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I'm a firm Jimmy G believer. I love what he did in San Francisco. He put a hurting on my Jaguars defense. Not many people did that last year. Okay, let's be honest. He's a playmaker.
Number 2 defense.
Exactly, he's a playmaker. He's going to throw the football a lot. I think with Jerick McKinnon, he adds another element to that offense. Carlos Hyde's a great running back, but he's more of a downhill runner. He's not a pass-catching back. I think McKinnon adds that value, which is something that Jimmy G didn't have last year. I like Jimmy G as a potential top 10 fantasy quarterback play this year, so I would definitely lock him in my lineup.
Fair enough on that one. Like I said, I have nothing against Jimmy G. Actually, I have him ranked number 13, so I still think he's a good for a backup. I just don't think he's one that you want as the quarterback on your team, because I think at that point, that's a high risk, high reward type thing. He's probably my next on my list of that. That's very high risk, high reward. So final question. We're going to close this out. This is a lot longer video than we thought it was going to be, but first video, we got to make ourselves known here. So it's the ultimate question. It may have nothing to do with quarterbacks, but here it is. So when the Super Bowl comes around, clearly the Super Bowl is going to be the Jaguars and the Vikings. Who wins?
This isn't even a question. The Jaguars are going to win all day.
No,
You're not going to
with that quarterback, with Blake Bortles at quarterback. Yeah.
I'm sorry, how many playoff games has Kirk Cousins won?
He hasn't made a playoff.
Oh, imagine that. Case closed.
Wow, but hold on. Where would the Redskins defense rank compared to the Jaguars defense?
So?
Jaguars defense number 2, Redskins defense what, number 25 or something?
Hey, if he's a good enough quarterback, he can make the plays to get him in there. That's what Blake Bortles did all day long.
Well, that and except the Steelers game, the defense kind of held the other team low.
Yeah, because on 4th and 10, when Pittsburgh would throw like a Hail Mary and get a touchdown, that's the defense doing its job. Bortles won that game. Let's not take away Bortles.
I'm not arguing that Bortles won that game, but he also didn't win the third one. That was the one that they needed him to win. They needed Bortles to come out and say, "This is my game." We had Case Keenum at that point. That was a third-string quarterback that we had going into the championship game. We have a starter now.
We had a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter of that game. The defense let us down, not Blake Bortles.
Yeah, but Blake Bortles missed some passes too late in that game.
Hey, but if the defense would have done its job like it did all game long...
So I can make that same argument for the Vikings last year. If the defense would have held the other team to no points, we would have won that game.
Yes, because...
It wasn't Case Keenum's fault.
How many points did they lose to against the Eagles?
It was 40-some, but to be fair, we didn't have a quarterback. We had our third-string quarterback win that far. Yes, he had a good season.
Who took you guys to the playoffs, so give him some credit.
He did. No, okay, so here's the thing. Case Keenum and Blake Bortles are very similar to where they were both not great quarterbacks, but with great defenses, they didn't have to be great quarterbacks. They just had to make plays occasionally in the games to win. And let me tell you, you look at that Jaguars versus 49ers game last year, against a defense that was not a great defense in San Francisco, and Blake Bortles, what was it? Was it 4 interceptions that game? I think it was 4 interceptions that game. Blake Bortles is not a good quarterback. Kirk Cousins has proven in the past that he is a good quarterback. He just hasn't had a good team. He now has a defense. He now has Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen and Kyle Rudolph. He has a running game.
So Pierre Garçon, Vernon Davis,
Pierre Garçon was like old by the time.
Jackson.
Deshaun
tight end.
So how's Deshaun Jackson looked since he left Philadelphia?
But when he's been in Washington, he had some good seasons.
No, he didn't.
When he was in Washington,
how many times? Okay, so I know this for a fact because I had Deshaun Jackson on a lot of my fantasy leagues. He maybe had 1 or 2 good games every year, and that was it. And that's been for the past 5 or 6 years. 1 or 2 good games is all you're gonna have. He was worthless in there. Pierre Garçon was old down there.
At the end of the day, we're just gonna have to say
Vernon Davis sucked.
Let's be honest. The Jaguars have a much easier road to get to the Super Bowl.
That's true. I'll give you that
one. The AFC is wide open, so we have a better chance of making it.
I'll give you that one.
The Vikings do have an uphill battle with so many good teams in the NFC.
Packers in their own division back to health.
Yep.
Not that I'm really...
And let's be honest, I really think that the upstart Bears have a lot of potential.
I'm still not sold on Trubisky quite yet.
I'm not saying that the Bears are going to be a playoff team, but they're definitely going to be better than what they were. So at the end of the day, if it gets to the Jaguars and Vikings Super Bowl, we'll just have to be along for the ride.
We were so close to it last year.
That's so close.
So close. But anyway, that's our video. That's quarterbacks. Feel free to like our video, subscribe to our channel. We're going to hope to have at least a video once per week.
Next week, we're going to be focusing on the wide receiver position, so there's going to be a lot to talk about. Hopefully we can get this. Hopefully we can get the video a little bit under time-wise, so that way you're not sitting here all day watching us just goof off and complain to each other. So thank you guys very much. Like I said, like and subscribe our videos, and God bless. Take care.